Welcome to the second devlog for Project-Orin. I just wanted to do a quick overview of the new feature I just added. It's this log down here, and its purpose is to get us out of the console and start working in the actual game area. I plan on having multiple buttons here. Right here, this is just a combat log, but in the future there'll be a world, utility, and then of course combat. At the end here we have a clear log button, and I'll show what that does in a second. We have another feature that I wanted to include real quick, and that's the ability to select enemies and attack specific ones in a specific order. Instead of just selecting one and attacking, we can now attack multiple enemies. But I'm going to showcase it on one first. So I'm going to start combat. I selected it. Now we have an add selected enemy button. I can select them. It's going to add it down here. We see we're attacking the Groat, which is right. Basic attack for 2 turns. In the future, you'll be able to select a particular type of attack on a list. Right now, this is just for debugging basic attacks. So I can do it again. And we can attack, and we'll see over here the output. And we attack twice, and then it attacks us once. So we're seeing us attacking the Groat, 10 damage twice, and then they attack me for 9 damage, and that looks correct. Over here, we can see the turns. So if I were to add, we can see it reduced by 2 turns. So if I attack, I killed them, and my turns get refreshed. We can see here that we killed the Groat, and if I heal, it also updates down here as well. So let's generate a new list with multiple enemies. I can clear the log here. So I'm going to start combat. I'm going to add the Groat twice. I'm going to attack this Melange once, and then this one once. There we go. Groat, Groat, Melange, Melange. And then they attacked me. I just wanted to quickly showcase that new feature. We now have a log. In the future, it's going to be maybe a little more styled. Right now, it's just color-coded to kind of show what's happening. You can quickly scroll through and see, like, oh, green's been blocked. We have a critical attack, mostly just normal damage. I think I want to add the weapon that they're using to these. So it says, Orin attacks Groat using. I think that'll be maybe a little more descriptive. I'm not sure yet. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the code real quick just to showcase how it kind of works a little bit and just a quick rundown of the changes. Okay, here we are in the code. I'm going to showcase how the add attack function works, which is what takes in enemies into the log and allows us to attack them in the order that we specify. Essentially what happens is it takes in the selected enemy that we select. When the red borders around them, that's the selected enemy. It takes their enemy class and proceeds to hardcode at the minute, remove turns from the player by 2. In the future, it'll be probably dependent on the weapon, the type of attack, and then maybe if the enemy has some kind of multiplier that makes it harder to attack them. I'm not sure yet. But for now, it's hard-coded at 2 for testing. We cause a player re-render because we have to update that the turns have changed. We went over why that's an issue in the last video. And here we're seeing the actual update handler, which essentially we call a function called update log handler. It takes in a string for what type of log you want to add it to, and then it takes in a JSX element as the second parameter. Right now, it's all inline. Soon, I'm going to offload it into a actual JSX element, so it's going to be its own component. And then it'll take props in for like the enemy name, the weapon name, the damage, and then it'll just output it. So it's going to significantly lower the amount of code, but for now, for testing, it's just kind of like this. Anyway, it goes through all the different text that you see on the screen. In this case, we're getting tag color, which is, if I bring it up, the little tag colors here, like this one's red. And this one's for utility. So this one would be, I believe, blue or teal. And then we have the text container, which is actually giving us the information, and then any formatting we need for like colored numbers. Like in this case, the number 2 here for the basic attack is using a utility. And I believe that's when we add an enemy to the, so if I were to add one, I believe what we're looking at is the code that makes this look the way it is. So every time we select a new enemy, it's added to this array. And then down here, when the player actually attacks, it takes in that attack list that we generated up here in the state. And then it goes through it one by one and then does the appropriate attack. So over here, we have the global log. We have different log types that I've determined up here through TypeScript. We can take in combat, selector, clear selector, world, and clear all. There'll probably be more in the future, but for now, this is all I need. I'm using a reducer. It makes the most sense to me. We're having multiple state update and depend on each other. Over here are the cases. It takes in the action, which is the reducer action, which is a log type, and then, of course, the JSX element that I talked about over here. Looks for the log type. Let's say we're adding to combat, and it returns the previous state, and then it modifies the combat log with the previous combat log, and then it adds the new combat log. I decided to forward it. After all, it is going to be global. There's going to be multiple components interacting with this log and adding to it, whether it's in the utility section, the world section. I needed to make it global. Making it a parent is a awful idea, because then the combat component would be under it, and since it's asynchronous, if the log were to update, it would re-render the combat component and essentially cause a lot of issues. And it's one of those cases that I feel like are appropriate given what I'm doing. So right here, I'm using a use effect to automatically scroll the log on a new entry. So if I bring it up again, whenever I attack anything, like let's say this, every time I'm not going to touch the log, every time it adds a new one, it auto scrolls. And that's the same over here too. So if I were to say, there it goes, it automatically scrolls this one as well. Okay, I just wanted to give a quick update to showcase the new features and a little bit of the code that went behind it. I hope you enjoy, and I'm going to continue to work on this. I believe the next feature I need to work on is probably offloading, well, internal feature I should say, is offloading those inline JSX elements to an external component that is reusable, and also maybe fleshing out the combat system a little bit. I'm thinking of starting to add different types of attacks and stuff like that to really get the combat system going. Maybe a little more information for the enemies too, and maybe how they interact with me. I'm unsure, but that is my new goal.